SpaceX just became a $2 trillion company, and the strangest part of the story is not a rocket. It is not Mars. It is not even Starlink. It is data centers. And not just data centers on Earth. SpaceX is now talking about data centers in space, which sounds ridiculous until you look at the machine the company is trying to build. Most people still think SpaceX is a rocket company, and honestly, that makes sense. The rockets are the show. They launch, they land, they explode, and for a few minutes, the internet stops scrolling. But the market is not valuing SpaceX like a company that sells rocket rides. At its IPO price, SpaceX was valued at about $1.77 trillion, and after trading began, it pushed above $2 trillion. That is one of the biggest companies in America money. So the question is not, why are people excited about SpaceX? The question is, what does SpaceX know how to build that could be worth that much? The answer starts with rockets. But if you only look at the rockets, you miss the machine. A normal rocket company sells a launch. The customer pays, the payload goes up, the mission ends. SpaceX is doing something more interesting. It is using rockets to build the road. Because the valuable thing is not just the rocket, it is access. If you can move things into orbit cheaper, faster, and more often than almost anyone else, then space stops being a stunt. It starts becoming a place where infrastructure can be built. Its own filing says SpaceX has launched more than 80% of the world's mass to orbit each year since 2023. That is the number that matters. Not viral launches, mass to orbit. Because every satellite, every mission, every future space factory needs the same thing first, a way to get there. So the rocket is not the whole business. The rocket is the road. But a road only becomes valuable when something starts moving on it. That is Starlink. This is where SpaceX starts looking less like a rocket company and more like a money machine. SpaceX built the road to orbit, used that road to launch thousands of its own satellites, then turned those satellites into a global internet network. Homes can pay for it. Ships can pay for it. Planes can pay for it. Governments can pay for it. Suddenly, the rocket business becomes a subscription business. In 2025, SpaceX's connectivity segment, mostly Starlink, generated about $11.4 billion in revenue. That is the first big twist. The rocket gets the attention, but Starlink shows why the rocket matters. SpaceX did not just sell tickets on the road. It built the road, then put its own traffic on it. But if Starlink is the first business on top of the road, the next layer is where the story gets much stranger. Inside this new SpaceX story is X, the app most people still think of as Twitter, and xAI, the company behind Grok. At first, that sounds like three separate worlds smashed together: rockets, satellite internet, AI. But in the AI era, the connection is not as random as it looks. AI does not only need chips, it needs data, distribution, users, and feedback from the real world. And X has something most AI labs would love to have: a live feed of human attention. Roughly 350 million posts are created on X every day. That is people arguing, joking, reacting, buying, watching, and chasing whatever the world cares about right now. Now, to be clear, this does not mean every X post magically turns into better AI. That is not how this works. But it does give the AI side of SpaceX a very unusual asset: data, distribution, users, and feedback, all connected to a platform people already use. So now the stack starts to appear. Rockets give SpaceX the road to orbit. Starlink gives it an internet network above Earth. X gives it a live data and distribution layer on Earth. xAI gives it the model layer. And once you see the stack, SpaceX starts to look less like one company and more like connected infrastructure layers. But even that is not enough, because AI has one more bottleneck that is getting harder to ignore: factories. People talk about AI like it is software floating in the cloud, but the cloud is not a cloud. It is buildings, power, cooling, GPUs, fiber, land, supply chains. That is why the data center part of the SpaceX story matters so much. The filing discusses Colossus and Colossus II, huge AI compute facilities that together are described as roughly 1 gigawatt of compute power. A gigawatt is not a server closet. That is power plant language. And once you see that, the AI story starts to look very Musk-like. It is not just build an app. It is find the bottleneck, make it physical, scale it aggressively, and try to own the layer everyone else needs. That happened with rockets. That happened with Starlink. And now SpaceX is trying to do it with AI infrastructure. But here is the final jump. If AI data centers on Earth keep hitting limits around power, land, cooling, and the grid, then what is the most SpaceX answer imaginable? Move some of the factory off Earth. That is the wild idea behind orbital AI compute. In plain English, data centers in space. To be clear, this is not solved. Space has brutal problems. Radiation, heat, debris, repair, regulation, launch cost. SpaceX's own filing warns that orbital AI compute is novel, untested, difficult, and uncertain. But the idea belongs in the story because SpaceX is one of the only companies where the pieces even connect. Rockets to launch hardware, Starlink to operate networks in orbit, XAI to use the compute, X as a data layer, and giant AI infrastructure already being built on Earth. So the point is not that SpaceX has figured out data centers in space. The point is that SpaceX is building the kind of machine that could attempt it. That is the real SpaceX bet. Not rockets by themselves, not Mars by itself, not Starlink by itself. The bet is that the next economy will need infrastructure above Earth, and SpaceX wants to own as much of it as possible. That is why every label feels too small. Rocket company misses Starlink. Internet company misses XAI. AI company misses the rockets. Space company misses the data centers. The real story is the stack. Rockets build the road. Starlink puts traffic on that road. X adds live data and distribution. XAI adds the model layer. Data centers become the AI factories. And one day, SpaceX wants some of those factories above Earth. SpaceX is not just selling rides to space. It is trying to own the infrastructure that makes space useful.